Today we're going to be doing the nitrate test using the Nitrate Probe. And the way that test works is that we set up a calibration curve on the Nitrate Probe using known standards. And we read the Nitrate Probe in millivolts. And then when we do our test sample, we'll have a calibration curve that relates the milligrams per liter of nitrate to a certain millivolt reading on the probe. And then we can go ahead and test our sample and get the same. We can use that millivolt reading and the calibration curve to estimate what the concentration of nitrate is in our sample. So what we have set up here is we have some all plastic ware. We've got a 1 milligram per liter standard that's from North Central Labs. We have a 2 milligram per liter standard, and that is from also North Central Labs. And in the middle here, we're going to prepare a labs fortified blank, and for QA/QC. And for that, we want to use a nitrate standard from a different source. And here we have the standard from the HACH company, 10 milligrams per liter. And for that, I'm going to make up a 5 milligram per liter lab fortified blank. And that we'll use to test how well our calibration went on the nitrate probe. So I'll show that dilution here. But then our last calibration standard is a 10 milligram per liter, and that's also from North Central Labs. And finally, we have our sample, and this is the drinking water from the NWTC tap here in the lab. And that's the sample that we're going to estimate what the nitrate concentration is. So in each of the, we're going to use some mixing bars in each of these beakers, and I'll show you how we're going to use the nitrate probe. But in each of these beakers, we're going to have 10 milligrams per liter of our standard or our sample, and we're going to add another 10 milligrams per liter of a buffer solution. And that's then going to be used to take the millivolt reading on our nitrate probe. So just to get started here, I'm going to take here 5 milligrams per liter, 5 milligrams of our standard from HACH. This is 10 milligrams per liter, and I want to make a 5 milligram per liter laboratory fortified blank. So I've got an automatic pipetter here, and I've got that set to a 5 milliliter setting. And I'm going to take 5 milliliters of that, draw it up. I'm going to put that in our graduated cylinder. Okay. And then I'll dilute that up to 10 milliliters, and we should have a 5 milligram per liter standard lab fortified blank. So let me do that. I'm adding lab grade reagent water. To the 10 milliliter setting. Okay. So that sets up our, and to each of these standards, our lab fortified blank and our test sample, each of these are 10 milliliters, and to each of those in these beakers, I'm going to add 10 milliliters of the buffer. So then we'll switch over to the probe. Our nitrate probe, it's been soaking in this solution at least an hour. It comes out of storage. It's been filled with new electrode solution. And the plug is off. So there is a plug here that has to be removed for us to conduct the testing. the solution it's stored in is 100 milligram per liter nitrate. So I want to do a good rinse of this probe before we get started with the test. So let's get that rinsed off nice so we don't get any extra nitrate in our test solution or in our standards. Okay, I've got a stir plate here. I've got a little magnetic stir. And if I remember, it takes about a minute for each of these to stabilize. But we're going to take and test the reading here, the millivolt reading. You'll see it on the meter there, but we're going to test the 1, the 2, and the 10 standard. We've also got the 5 milligram per liter lab fortified blank, and then our test sample. So let me take this for a little ride. And it may take some time to stabilize. This is the 1 milligram per liter standard. Okay, so we got a nice stable reading of 87 for the 1 milligram per liter standard. I'm going to rinse this off again. And since we only have one of these small magnetic stirrers, I'm going to rinse this off. It. And we'll move on to our 2 milligram per liter standard. So we're going to demonstrate use of the HACH Nitrate Kit. It's a field kit and uses a colorimetric reagent that's contained in this powder, and then the pocket colorimeter for reading the absorbance after react time. So the way this works, here are the instructions. We're going to set the colorimeter to channel 1. I'll show you how to do that. We put in, we fill the 10 milliliters of sample. We add the reagent, and then shake and let it react for 5 minutes. And then while we're waiting for that 5 minutes, we're going to prepare the blank. The blank as well is the sample, but we don't add the color reagent. The idea is that we want to subtract out any color that's present in the sample itself. So when we do the reading, we wipe down the vial and then simply insert it into the colorimeter. And for the blank, there's a blank button. I'll show you that. And then when that's zeroed, we take the sample after 5 minutes and do the same thing. Okay, so I'll show you here. I've got 2 vials full of our sample. Our sample today is the water from our lab, the potable water, drinking water. And we're going to run the nitrate on it. So for the sample itself, I'm going to take one of these pillows, and you can see it says tear it along the top here. See if I'm able to do that. Okay. And then we're going to pour the contents into one of these vials. There we go. And our instructions say to mix this for about a minute. So we can come back. We're on channel 2. We want to set it back to channel 1. So we can do that in this fashion here. You see it goes back to channel 1. Okay. So we'll prepare our blank. I'm going to wipe it down. I actually have some lens paper here. Wipe it down, and we've got the little triangle goes in the front. We just enter that in there, put the top on, and then we'll hit the 0, and that will subtract out any of the background color in that sample. Okay, and now we'll wait. So we do have our 5 minutes. React time. Here's our sample we're going to test. And there's the little triangle. We're going to put that in the front. We'll see how much nitrate is in our drinking water. So here's our result, 1.3 milligrams per liter. The maximum contaminant level for drinking water is 10. And I would expect it to be in this range since we're pulling water from Lake Michigan for our source water. Nitrate becomes more of an issue if you have a groundwater source, and that gets impacted by the fertilizers that get applied to farm fields. So, but this is a very acceptable